A great gator-sized greetings to all of you. Today, we're talking about everybody's favorite American presidential election distortion machine, the Electoral College. Coming to you live from the swamp, the Gilmore Show. In these United States of ours, the most powerful office in the land isn't decided by who gets the most votes. Nope. The presidential election is decided by a convoluted, busted-ass compromise to slave owners that has, among other things, resulted in the person who won more votes not becoming president twice in the last 2 decades, in 2000 and 2016. I can tell you this much. If the team that scored more points didn't win the Super Bowl because of some arcane rules about which quarter the points were scored and multiplied by speed, wind, divided by ghosts of the Confederacy, well, we all might be screaming it's high time to change the rules. It is high time to change the rules. Was that not clear? I hope I was clear. Here's 5 reasons the Electoral College is unsurpassed malarkey of the highest order. Thanks, Joe. Number 1, it's a holdover from chattel slavery. Number 2, it's not democratic. The person who gets the most votes doesn't always win. Some votes count more than others. 3, it means only a few states decide the election. Number 4, it maybe depresses voter turnout. Number 5, it favors Republicans, for now. Until we get rid of the Electoral College, American democracy comes with a big old asterisk. You can add it to the other big old asterisks in American democracy, like the unrepresentative nature of the Senate, the distortionary impact of money in politics, the unelected power of the Supreme Court, extreme gerrymandering. Whew, that's a lot of asterisks, looking like an old-timey cartoon panel trying to say motherfucker. So why exactly do we decide who gets to be president based on a system that makes as much sense as an ice cream cake? It's not as good as ice cream, and it's not as good as cake. Although, I'm sure I have something to celebrate. Send me one now, we'll debate. Stop me if you've heard any of these cockamamie canards before. It prevents the big states from calling all the shots. It ensures that the whole country is involved in electing the president. It protects the minority from being overwhelmed by the majority. It protects rural voters from being steamrolled by urban voters. The thing is, though, none of this is true. And none of these contemporary rationales explain why way back when the people cobbling together the system of government in these United States went with the Electoral College instead of anything else. Just like many of the worst parts of current U.S. society, the Electoral College owes its existence primarily to chattel slavery. When the founders were finalizing the details of the Constitution, the more populous northern states would always win if we went straight by popular vote. The South wouldn't go along without a compromise that put a giant thumb on the scale for them. So the Electoral College, along with the counting of enslaved people towards electors that came up with it, was born. And boy, did this bullshit compromise yield dividends for the worst people in the country. All but 4 years of the first 36 years of the United States, a slaveholder from Virginia was president. They didn't used to elect senators directly either, by the way, until 1913 when a constitutional amendment changed the rules to make Senate elections more democratic. Redlining, Jim Crow, mass incarceration. There's no end to the long-term structural impacts of chattel slavery on the United States. You can add the Electoral College's fuckery to that pile. The Electoral College, put here by slavery supporters, still here for some of the same kind of thinking. So here's how it works now. In the somewhat dry and quite technical language of the U.S. government archives, electoral votes are allocated among the states based on the census. Every state is allocated a number of votes equal to the number of senators and representatives in its U.S. congressional delegation. 2 votes for its senators in the U.S. Senate, plus a number of votes equal to the number of its congressional districts. When you read anything in an official voice, it certainly sounds dispassionate and fair. It's math. It's equations. It's as official as regulation cornhole, having dimensions of 23.5 to 24 inches wide by 47.5 to 48 inches wide with a long hole diameter of 6 inches plus or minus 1/4 inch. It's official. Come on. That's not even a regulation. Okay, so they dole out these electoral votes on a state-by-state basis, and it's winner take all. You get 50% plus one, and you get all the electoral votes from that state, except for Nebraska and Maine. They got a weird electoral split in those two places. Here's the thing, though. When you look a little closer at all this divvying, turns out it's not all quite so official and neat. There are some, shall we say, irregularities. California has one vote per 712,000 people, while in Wyoming, there's one electoral vote per 195,000 people. That means your vote in California gets basically 1/4 of the representation in the Electoral College that Wyoming does. Not exactly one person, one vote. Add an asterisk to the pile. The popular vote winner and the Electoral College vote winner are usually the same person. Usually, not always. In 2000, George W. Bush received 47.9% of the popular vote, and Al Gore got 48.4%. In regular math, Al Gore won. In electoral math, though, thanks to the Supreme Court stepping in and stopping the count, Bush took Florida and ended up with 271 electoral votes to Gore's 266. Bush was president despite winning 500,000 fewer votes. And there was zero negative consequences from Bush being president despite winning 500,000 fewer votes. Then again, in 2016, Hillary Clinton received 65,835,514 votes. Donald Trump received 62,984,828 votes. Hillary Clinton received almost 3 million more votes than Donald Trump. Donald Trump became president. All worked out just fine. The thing about bullshit is, you spend 2 seconds looking too closely, you start to get overwhelmed by the smell. In this case, the whole don't let the big states overwhelm the small states thing doesn't make any sense at all when you dig in a little bit. Because the popular vote doesn't matter. Now our elections are decided by a few states. The so-called swing states. There's a bit of swing in these swing states year to year as populations move, vagaries, etc. In 2024, the swing states are widely held to be Arizona, 11 electoral votes, population 7.3 million. Georgia, 16 electoral votes, population 10.9 million. Michigan, 15 electoral votes, population 10 million. Nevada, 6 electoral votes, population 3.1 million. North Carolina, 16 electoral votes, population 10.7 million. Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes, population 12.9 million. Wisconsin, 10 electoral votes, population 5.8 million. All told, these 7 states add up to 60.7 million people out of 333.3 million people in the whole U.S. That means states representing a mere 18% of the United States more or less decide who gets to hold the most powerful office in the land. Whole swaths of the country are consistently ignored by presidential campaigns. The state with the most Republican presidential voters in the 2020 election, the state where more people voted for Trump than any other state in the country was California. That's right, liberal hellhole California. There's a shitload of Democrat votes in Florida and Texas, they're big states. Their votes basically don't count either. The idea that the Electoral College forces candidates to campaign across the entire country is not borne out by the reality that candidates do not campaign across the entire country. Their campaigns overwhelmingly focus on these few small states where elections are decided, creating a massive distortionary effect on the tenor and subject matter of said campaigns. What about the rural voters? What about the people in the diners? You don't want the cities ruling over them like some sort of mob, do you?
What do you make of the pick of J.D. Vance?
I think it's a great pick. I trust President Trump's choice, and I don't know much about him. I'm anxious to learn more about him, but he speaks well. He's an intelligent guy, and I think he's a great pick.
He's middle of the road. He came up really hard, and look at what he achieved. I think he's fantastic.
No doubt.
I think he's a great pick because he's 39 years old, and I think we got to look at the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
USA! 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 USA!
Phew. Gotta make sure we get their opinion on everything. Let's be real for a second. Most people in the United States, and the world in fact, live in urban areas. 80% of the people in the country live in cities or urban areas. Elie Mystal dug into the Electoral College real deep in a recent article for The Nation, and well, the truth is staring us right in the face. There are only 4 states in the country that are actually rural in the sense that majority of their populations live in rural areas: Maine, Mississippi, Vermont, and West Virginia. In the so-called battleground states, more than 70% of the population lives in urban areas. Mr. Mystal hit a home run here. So let's put that full, beautiful, damning quote up here on the screen, shall we? So what's really going on here? Why do so many people believe the Electoral College protects rural interests when it demonstrably does not? I believe what's happening is that these people are using rural as a euphemism for white and urban as a euphemism for black. The Electoral College protects white interests and sensibilities from being overrun by the emerging non-white majority in this country, and the people who defend the EC are desperate to keep it that way. The mob rule these people claim to be afraid of is not, say, mobs of angry whites attacking the Capitol to install the government of their losing presidential candidate. They're worried about mobs of black people living in cities, voting for the candidate of their choice, and having their votes count just as much as those white folks who are spread out around the country. If you are ever wondering why a thing is the way it is in the United States, you can safely guess racism most of the time. It's not funny. And it sure seems like the anti-democratic one person, not exactly one vote, maybe we don't actually care so much about your vote depending on what state you live in nature of the Electoral College, has an impact on whether a person takes the time to vote. Voter turnout tends to be significantly higher in battleground states, according to a 2016 NPR article. It's impossible to pin down exactly why this might be the case, but it seems like knowing your vote has almost no impact on who becomes president might be something of a depressant on bothering to go vote. It should probably not shock anyone to hear that the current system, given the population breakdown in these United States, gives the Republican Party a built-in advantage when it comes time to pick the next commander-in-chief. The 2022 Cook Partisan Voting Index, official, showed that Republicans benefit from an electoral map tilted in their favor on nearly all levels. Fundamentally, what the Cook PVI scores make apparent is that Republican presidential candidates can lose by popular vote by a narrow margin and still win in an Electoral College majority. That, however, is almost impossible for a Democrat to replicate. Another way to look at it is that Democrats need to win the popular vote by at least 3 points, but more realistically 4, to feel confident that it will translate into an Electoral College win. Here's another graph showing the ups and downs of Electoral College advantage by party. We've dug into the facts and figures and percentages a lot in this episode, so let's take a second to make a quick, direct statement. A system where the person who gets the most votes doesn't win the presidency is dumb. It's anti-democratic. There's no good reason to have it in place, and plenty of bad reasons. It's also not particularly popular. People favor getting rid of the Electoral College by 2-to-1 margins. Perhaps unsurprisingly, more Democrats support this idea than Republicans. I can see why. There isn't really a quick fix for this glaring problem. A constitutional amendment seems pretty unlikely, given that it would require the Republican-controlled states most likely to lose out to vote in favor of it. Knowing the amendment is tricky, some state legislatures have signed on to the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Under this compact, they award all their electoral votes to whoever wins the popular vote. It's been adopted by 17 states and the District of Columbia. It will go into effect when they represent an absolute majority of votes. The presidency is a powerful position. It matters who gets to sit in the Oval and carry the nuclear football and who gets to pardon those poor turkeys come Thanksgiving. So let's not use a system that sucks and disenfranchises people. Let's get rid of one of those asterisks on American democracy. Down with the Electoral College. Up with regulation cornhole. That's through the hole. I win. Ha ha! Gilmore out!